What is up, fellas, and welcome to another episode of Rewriting History with me, the Goob. This episode's an interesting one. I'm not entirely sure how to present this one because I very much want this channel to be taken seriously. I want myself to be taken seriously, and I'm fully aware that this topic is probably not going to serve me in those goals. But after not looking into this story for 8 years, I finally did. And in my opinion, the evidence was overwhelming that these things were legitimate. And so I feel like I would be derelict in my, duty, I guess, if I didn't present this. So I don't expect anyone to take my word for it. I don't expect you guys to trust me. This is massive. But if you think there's even a 1% chance that these things could possibly be real, I truly do encourage you to investigate this yourself. I have provided a link down in the description. It is the very first thing I included. This does not comprehensively cover all of the testing that's done. It only covers what was done up until 2019. So quite a bit more has been done since then. But this link does contain links to actual scientific studies, a whole lot of them. They've got images of CT scans and x-rays and all this kind of stuff. So it's a good starting point if you guys are curious about this. Now, I guess with that little disclaimer out of the way, let's get into trying to cover this topic. And this story is very complicated for many reasons. And it's also just kind of crazy. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys and give you just a quick look at some of the images. You can see that they have scans here. All right, you guys, I am showing you my screen. Yes. Okay, this is just for one of the mummies. This is just a quick look before I even get into the details. I just want to show you some of the scans and point out that these mummies are fully intact with all of their internal organs still in place. All of their soft tissue is still present, the tendons, the blood vessels. You can actually see these things on these scans. And I myself and all of the experts that have inspected these things have been totally unable to come up with a way that you could fake this. So, all right, what are we looking at with these Nazca mummies? Let me give some background. In 2016, a guy named Mario from Peru brought forth some mummies with elongated skulls and actually took them to the Minister of Culture in Peru, which is in charge of archaeology and all of that, and was asking him to inspect these things. He wanted them scientifically investigated. Now, grave robbers don't often do that, but that is what Mario did, is he found these things and took them directly to the authorities to get them tested. The authorities had no interest in testing these things, so Mario continued looking for people to test them and was unable to find anyone for a while. Eventually, Gaia got involved. Gaia has, whatever you think of their reputation is what you think. Plenty of people think it's less than spectacular. So that didn't help the reputation of this story. And the Ikari Institute, another group that has somewhat of a dubious reputation, at least in academic circles, also got involved. And they both started doing testing. Gaia spent about $1 million doing tests like x-rays and CT scans, and much of that can be found in that link I provided in the description. And the more they looked at these things, the more they came to the conclusion that these things were real. And the Ministry of Culture did quite a bit to try and prevent this. You guys probably saw the debunk about the llama skulls, right? There was a presentation to the Peruvian Congress of these two mummies, these two tiny, silly-looking little mummies, and they were x-rayed and scanned and all over the internet, and people looked at them and they went, these are ridiculous, these are obvious fakes, these are chicken bones and llama skulls that have been crudely, put together. There's nothing real here. Well, those two dolls were fake. Those were not the mummies that were being inspected by the scientists. Those were two dolls that someone had faked, and they got caught getting, going through the airport with them. If you look up this story, that's pretty much all you're going to find on it is that debunk. That is not representative of the actual mummies. The Ministry of Culture proceeded to raid the Ica Institute and these other institutes that were holding these mummies. They tried to confiscate the mummies from them. Thankfully, they were unsuccessful. They even went into other countries. There was a museum in Argentina that had some of these remains on display, and they raided a museum in Argentina to take back these artifacts because they're cultural artifacts. At the same time, the Ministry of Culture is absolutely denying that these are real in any way, and is insisting that they're fakes, yet they're going to other countries to seize back their heritage. It seems like a bit of a contradiction. But eventually, just a few months ago, the Ministry of Culture in Peru actually tested these bodies themselves. My camera froze. I will be right back, fellas. Let me fix this. Give me 10 seconds. The Ministry of Culture themselves tested one of these mummies, and they too confirmed that they were real living beings and non-humans. At this point, there are so many different groups and individuals that have personally inspected these mummies, and not a single one of them, not one of them, has come out and declared these things as fake. The list of credentialed professionals that have had involvement at this point is very, very long. Many of them have chosen to remain anonymous. There's a pretty long list of anonymous universities and individuals as well. These people who have the mummies, they have given an open invitation to any and all scientists to come and inspect these things themselves. You are free to go there. Even individuals without credentials, some have been able to go and inspect them. There is a US team that just released their preliminary results, and their preliminary results were that we have been unable to find any evidence of forgery so far. Further testing is needed, meaning that they weren't able to find any evidence in their initial tests. So Japan, Germany, the US, Italy, France, Spain, all of these countries are now involved in this testing. All of them have mummies themselves that they are testing. None of them have come out and said these are fake. Not a single one. So let's go ahead and take a look at this website and actually take a look at some of this evidence, because I've only been talking about the humanoid mummies so far, and there's actually multiple different types of these mummies. So this is Maria, right? Yeah, this is Maria. Let's take a look at this video here. The CT scan. You can see her brain. Her brain is still intact. The brain stem is still intact. All of the musculature, the soft tissue, it's all there. It's all there. By the way, leave questions in chat. I'll try and engage with chat and answer them. This is such a crazy topic. Again, I don't really know how to cover it. So, ask any questions. I've looked into this a decent bit. I should be able to answer a lot of them. Their bones are hollow, or at least the other species' bones are hollow. I'm not 100% sure if Maria's are hollow. They have metal implants. These mummies have metal implants in them. Implants don't appear. The implants don't appear to be technological in any way. They seem to just be metal, and they seem to even be metal that you'd expect to find in Peru in this time. It's largely copper and silver, although traces of osmium have been found, osmium being the rarest and most expensive metal on Earth. It's about $2,000 a gram. And it's very difficult to process because you have to process platinum to get it. So that's a bit of a mystery. But these implants seem to be focused on areas of injury. These guys had a lot of broken bones, and they have these metal implants over top of the broken bones. But they're not implants like we would when we break a bone, where we screw structural support to the bones. These things aren't connected to the bones. They're just over the surface. There's speculation that they're biomedical and are somehow encouraging bone growth. But like a lot of this, it's not very well understood. So that's a look at Maria. There are multiple humanoid mummies. One of them, Montserrat, however you say his name, which is not on this page. Montserrat was actually pregnant. Montserrat was pregnant and has a fetus inside of its stomach with 3 fingers and 3 toes. I don't even think I mentioned the 3 fingers and 3 toes yet. Again, this story is so crazy. There's so much to it. A little difficult to cover, but they have 3 fingers and 3 toes, no thumbs, 0 thumbage, no opposable, just really long fingers with extra bones in their fingers. So we have 3 bones. Some of these mummies have 4, some of them have 5, but there's plastic surgeons that have inspected not only the hands, the entire things, and they find absolutely no sign of any manipulation. These weren't like 5-fingered hands that have been turned into 3-fingered hands. The bones are all proportional to each other. And again, all of the soft tissue is there on the CT scan. Like, you can see the tendons running through the fingers. But not only are there these humanoid mummies, there's also insectoid mummies and reptilian mummies, like this Josephina here. And when I was looking into this, I thought, okay, the humanoid mummies are real. Everyone's talking about the humanoid mummies and how they're real. And that's insane, but all right, I can accept a real humanoid alien mummy. And there wasn't much talk about these reptilians and insectoids. And I eventually realized that these are very deliberately being avoided in conversation by the scientists that are studying these things, because it's already a massive stretch to try and get anyone to accept the humanoid mummies. And trying to present this, I mean, look at this thing. It doesn't look, in my opinion, like a real living creature. I mean, it certainly doesn't resemble anything we've seen on Earth. And it has eggs. Like, we're getting pretty ridiculous. Metal implants, eggs, strange, unknown creatures. But I have watched many, many interviews with the scientists that have actually worked with these things. And while they don't actively talk about these other types, they do occasionally get asked questions in interviews. And every time they're asked, they reluctantly also say that they've been totally unable to find any signs of forgery in these beings. I realize how ridiculous this sounds, and I haven't even shown you the insectoids, which are far more ridiculous than this creature here. Again, I really encourage you all to look into this yourselves. I truly, strongly encourage you to look into this yourselves. To me, the CT scans are pretty overwhelming. The sheer number of people who have inspected these mummies now, including the Peruvian government itself as of a few months ago, and the fact that every single person who has inspected these has either remained silent. There are people who have refused to comment, right? But everyone else has either confirmed that these are real, or they've refused to comment. No one has come forward saying these are fake. Fellas, like, I don't think it's really hit me yet. The reality of this. By the way, this is the link I shared in the description. Examination of the molecular composition of different samples. So they do a lipid profile and stuff like that. Here are some DNA results. The full DNA analysis is available publicly. It's been uploaded to the, I believe it's the NHI database. And very interestingly, the DNA results are quite interesting. So I'm going to round these numbers for simplicity's sake and just make them into quarters, but the percentages were like 25, 28, 30, stuff like that. But 25% of Maria's DNA is human. And of the 3 humanoid mummies that have been tested, they all have human DNA that matches ancient Peruvians. It matches exactly what you would expect to find from ancient Peru. But instead of 100% of their DNA matching that, only a portion of it matches. In Maria, it's about 25%. There's another 50% that matches other species on this planet. And then the final 25% is unknown. This unknown DNA is found across all 3 species types of these mummies, the humanoid, the reptilian, and the insectoid. There is not human DNA found in the insectoid or the reptilian mummies, just the humanoid ones. So it sure would seem to indicate that aliens were coming down, maybe not coming down, maybe they were always here on Earth, maybe they're from underground. I don't know that part. But aliens came, interacted with Peruvians 1 to 2,000 years ago. That's the carbon dating that's been done on here, about 800 years to 1,800 years ago. And they were creating hybrids. They were creating hybrids with themselves and the creatures of Earth. The other 2 animals are a bonobo and a chimpanzee from Africa, by the way. So a 4-way hybrid is what Maria is. Truly detailed DNA sequencing hasn't been done. They are working on doing that now. I believe the US team is actively doing that. Yeah, I don't know, guys. Ask questions, because this stuff is blowing my mind. I don't know about you guys, but this is definitely blowing my mind. DNA analysis and the big hand. There's also body parts. It's not just whole mummies. They have heads. They have hands. I think the oldest hand that was tested went back to 7,000 years carbon dating. The carbon dating has been done, on multiple portions of the bodies. So, but DNA analysis of Maria, Victoria, and hands, DNA analysis of cerebral material in hand, right? There's a lot of evidence here. Extended bioinformatic DNA of Victoria, more DNA analysis of Victoria and a hand of Wawita and Maria. Wawita is a child. It's about a 5-year-old child. They did dental scans, and based on the baby teeth, they determined it was about 5 years old, assuming it ages like us. DNA comparison, Maria's hand, foot, coccyx, arm, and vertebrae. All of these studies are available for you to inspect, for anybody to inspect. And again, nobody's looked at this stuff and put together any type of debunk or takedown. 1,800 years ago for Maria, 800 years ago for Victoria. Hands, like I said, one of them goes back almost 7,000 years. A brain was tested. That went back 1,000 years. More carbon dating results. Here's a picture of Victoria and some results from the makeup of the metallurgy of the implants, which seemed to be, like I said, pretty in line with what you would find in Peru at that time. Yeah, weird old world. It's a dangerous topic to cover, but when I finally did look into it, it really, the evidence truly is overwhelming. And again, don't take my word for it. I really beg all of you to look into this yourselves. I don't know how to react to this. I don't think I've processed this truly. Like, not only do we have proof of aliens, of ancient aliens, we have dozens of them. We've had dozens of experts investigate them. No one's come out and said they're fake. And there's been almost no coverage on this. And I don't think this is a coincidence. I actually think this is 100% deliberate. And I did something interesting. I notice patterns. I'm a pattern guy. I really pick up on patterns. And so one of the first things that occurred to me, I immediately went to Grok. As soon as I got an inkling that these things might be real, I went to Grok and I said, hey, Grok, can you put together a timeline of every single time new information on these Nazca mummies was released to the public? And it did so. And then I said, hey, Grok, can you also put together a timeline of increased UFO reporting in the news? And it did. And then I asked it, hey, Grok, is there a correlation between these two, lists? And it went, yes, there is a very clear and obvious correlation. So I think that all of this UFO stuff, I don't know about you, it just hasn't rung true to me. It hasn't resonated with me. I think it's not resonating with a lot of people. I can't necessarily fully explain my reasoning why I think it's all bullshit, but I do. I think it's all bullshit. I trust my gut. My gut has a pretty good reputation, and my gut's been telling me that there's just not really anything here with all of this disclosure from the governments and the UFO stuff. And I'm sure there's something there, right? Secret government programs or something, but it just hasn't rung true as actual disclosure. It hasn't felt like actual aliens to me. Something felt off. And I think a lot of people are recognizing that, and a lot of people are feeling that. And I think all of this bullshit is actually to cover up the real aliens that we really, truly have. These things are out there in the public. There's been, like I said, open invitations to investigate these things. These files are online for people to look at. And yet they have managed to do an excellent job at keeping people oblivious to this. I mean, even in the UFO communities, this is totally written off. It's laughed at. People go, oh, you're wasting time with this bullshit. We've got orbs. Well, no, they're quite effective at running psyops, and you're wasting time on their bullshit. We've got bodies. We've got real bodies, and a lot of them. Yeah. Yes. Like I said, I've been listening to interviews. I've been watching like AI translated interviews on YouTube and stuff because these things aren't in English. There's almost nothing in English on this. And they said that there's an entirely new species that they haven't even presented, that they're going to be presenting. There's a giant skull, like an 8-foot skull, that hasn't really publicly been presented. It's only been presented one image of it. That skull is a fabrication, but it's an ancient fabrication. So it's a couple thousand years old, like these mummies. And it would seem that the Inca, out of other bones, made this, and it might not be 8 foot tall. It's way larger than a human skull, though. But out of other bones, they constructed this alien head, one of these elongated heads, and then again coated it with cadmium and diatomaceous earth, like these other mummies, and that was found in the cave as well. So the Inca, or the Aztec, not the Aztec, the Nazca rather, it would seem were like venerating these things, paying tribute to them. I haven't covered the implants. I haven't covered the Nazca lines. Weird Old World is in the chat, and Weird Old World has a newly discovered Nazca line that is very directly related to this. Let me go on his Twitter and see if I can pull it up real quick, because he found an alien. He found one of these beings. Here it is. Share this tab instead. So here we have a geoglyph of what is quite possibly one of these tridactyls. Very interesting geoglyph. There's a bunch of art from the Nazca. I provided a link in my previous video of some of the art. That's just some of the art. These tridactyls are being depicted by the Nazca. I probably am not going to get too deep into this today because I want to cover more things like the implants. But initially, I was approaching this from an archaeological perspective. So I was linking this, geographically, like the traveling through this and everything. The Tiwanaku, all of these cultures, they all bound their heads. They all had elongated skulls. So were they trying to mimic these beings? I think so. Brian Forrester, by the way, his elongated skulls that he tested, when he sent off 15 skulls for DNA testing results, the first lab he sent them to, some of the skulls came back as unknown, just like these Nazca tridactyl mummies. So, and Brian was also pointing out that some of these skulls seem to have a larger volume, just like these tridactyl mummies, and seem to have larger eye sockets, just like these tridactyl mummies. So years ago, before these were ever discovered, it would seem that Brian Forrester actually had his hands on some of these skulls from these tridactyl mummies and maybe didn't realize it, had a bit of a hybrid on his hands and had it DNA tested, and those results came back as unknown. And I want to clarify, unknown does not mean unreadable, right? These results were readable. We got clear DNA results, and we matched them against our database of all the DNA we've collected of every living thing on Earth, and it didn't match anything known on Earth. So let me share my screen again. I think I'm going to try and show you a little bit of the implants if I can. I think, let's see. Well, here's some little pictures of the little reptilian guys with eggs in them. The eggs have also been tested. They are egg material and biomaterial. They're not like stones or anything. That weird implant across the chest that we saw in the scan. Here's a metallic implant in the hand. Here is a implant in another hand, which not only is the metallurgy makeup, similar to what we would expect to find in Peru, it was described as looking as if it had been cold hammered, just like what you would find in ancient Peru, which is very, very strange. The metallic implant on Alberto's hip, like I said, none of these implants seem to have technology involved with them. They just appear to be metal. Some of them have symbols on them or designs on them. But the one in Alberto's hip actually did react with some type of measuring equipment in their lab. I don't know what, because this was an AI translation from Spanish, so I wasn't 100% clear, but he was describing how none of the other implants reacted, but as they were scanning with this certain piece of equipment, the needle seemed to react when it was near this hip implant. So maybe there is some technology involved in some of these implants. Again, coming from translation, so it wasn't necessarily 100% clear, but it also seemed like they were describing, they definitely were describing bone growth around this implant, but from what it sounded like, it didn't sound like bone growth where they had implanted the metal into the bone and the bone healed and grew around it. It sounded like they had implanted the metal into the flesh and the bone had grown to meet the implant. And like I said, a lot of these implants were over broken bones. So were these somehow like stimulating bone growth? That's been speculated. It's really unknown territory. On some of these videos down here, I think they have, or let me go to another page. Maybe I don't, but there's the implants on the scans as well. You can see they're mostly small implant. There you go. You can see the implants, right? There's a couple on the skull. There's like one on the knee, some in the shoulder. They're small. They're kind of all over. They're looking at the fetus inside of its belly. You can kind of make out its big old head up there. And if you look closely on some of the scans, it does look like it has 3 fingers and 3 toes. I don't know how you fake a tridactyl fetus inside of a mummy that is fully intact with all of its organs and soft tissue. These things were real. They weren't human. They existed 1,000 to 2,000 years ago in Peru. I mean, again, I don't think I've really processed this fully. I think it's too big for me to actually process. What do you guys think? I'm at a bit of a loss here. Yes, it does look like paper mache. It really, truly does. And I realize that these things look ridiculous. And I haven't even shown the insectoid mummies, which truly, truly look ridiculous. But part of the reason why it looks like paper mache is because these mummies were painted in cadmium, and then they were coated in diatomaceous earth. So you can actually see on some of these mummies, they've scraped off some of this in certain areas. Like you can find photographs of the fingerprints. They've scraped some of the fingerprints and toe prints clean. Some of the toe prints are linear rather than, what we have. But the fingerprints seem to be similar to what we have, interestingly. This is the child, right? And so the skin is intact. The skin also seems to be reptilian. Even in the humanoid mummies, they have, looked at the skin under microscopes. They've taken samples of the skin and they have analyzed it chemically and all of this, and it most closely resembles scales, reptile skin. This one actually has some hair on it. There's some red hair on the back of the neck. You can see its titties there. It had breasts. Let's see if we get a good view of the hair on the back of it. It's just a little bit of hair. You can see just a little bit of hair on the top of the head here. Very thin, very wispy. But this is the only mummy that's had hair on it. You can see how long those toes are. Not all of these things are identical. Even the humanoid ones, there's different variations. Some of them have, like I said, 4 bones in their toes and fingers. Some have 5. They all seem to share the same general characteristics, the big elongated head, but so yes and no. It seems like no. I'm going to say no because I covered the DNA results, right? The Maria has DNA from 4 different species, it would seem like. And one of the species is entirely unknown DNA to anything on Earth. Keep in mind that bananas share like 85% of our DNA or something ridiculous like that, right? So this is entirely unknown DNA. So it doesn't seem like just a divergent humanoid. It seems like there's actual hybridization going on and some totally unknown foreign element, some alien element, whether they be aliens that are here on Earth, like maybe they're underground. They could be living underground, or they could be from outer space. I don't actually know. But this is more than just a divergent humanoid. And you combine that with the other mummy variations, like the insectoids and the reptilians. That's how they refer to them. They refer to them as reptilian, I guess, because of the eggs they have. The insectoid mummies, I had a bunch of images on my phone and I forgot to transfer them to my computer before I started this. So I'm going to see if I can Google image some of the insectoid mummies. These things truly look ridiculous. I mean, this is one of them. This is an actual, it's got metal implants. You can see metal implant there, metal implant there. There's some on the skull as well. X-rays have been done of this. It's got tiny little bones in there and everything. And like I said, I'm sharing the wrong tab. Share this tab instead. Like I said, when the people who are actually investigating this stuff and investigating these bodies are asked in interviews about the insectoids and about the reptilians, they reluctantly admit that they've been unable to find any signs of these being crafted either. They don't like to talk about these things, understandably so, right? But when they do, they also admit that these things seem to be real. I mean, look at this thing. This is not one of the insectoids. This is one, or actually, this might be one of the insectoids. The insectoids are very, very small. The humanoids are about 5 feet tall. So Maria, Montserrat, those are like 5 feet tall. The ones that look like this are about 2.5 feet tall. The insectoids are like 20 centimeters. They're inches. And I get it. That looks ridiculous. That looks insanely fake. Based off that picture, you'd have to be stupid to possibly believe that this thing was real. I get that. I feel that myself. I don't even argue that. But if you look at the scientific evidence, it becomes very difficult to deny these things. It really becomes very difficult to deny these things, in my opinion. As ridiculous as they look, I can only conclude that they're real. I wasn't sharing the screen. Wow. Good one. I do that at least once an episode. All right. Well, look at this. Look at this insectoid. Look at this insectoid. Absolutely ridiculous looking. But again, there's x-rays of this thing. Here's a little metal implant here. Little metal implant here. Little metal implant here. And there's more throughout the body that you can't see. Little one there. This thing looks ridiculous. That thing, with the eggs inside, that thing looks ridiculous. But the people working with them say they're real. Overwhelmingly, every one of them. I don't know if breeding in the traditional sense, but yes. I mean, they were hybridizing with these ancient peoples. Like I said, the DNA, the human DNA from the 3 humanoid mummies that have been tested matched ancient Peruvian DNA. It was exactly what you would expect. There were 2 mummies someone's actually graphed all this out, charted all this out. A DNA expert has looked at the raw data and modeled all of this stuff, right? So 2 of the mummies were very, very, very closely related genetically. Like they were, probably a family, right? And then one of them was slightly more distant, but still within that same population group of ancient Peruvians, exactly what you find in ancient Peru. So yes, they were interbreeding, but I don't know if this was truly interbreeding or if this was, some other more advanced type of genetic manipulation. So many things I want to point out. So I'm just going to start randomly pointing out interesting things, right? In Peru, we find trepanned skulls that have holes drilled in them with survival rates higher than what we achieve today in modern times. Could this explain why they were able to perform surgery more successfully than we do today? Does this explain the megalithic structures, right? How much does this explain? And is this isolated to just Peru? I really strongly doubt it is. You've got a people, something that's able to do this genetic manipulation. They could probably travel around the earth, right? I mean, I'm having a hard time processing this. This is all kind of blowing my mind. But yeah, how does this affect this obviously affects everything. Ancient aliens are no longer a ridiculous idea, but an actual fact. So are all of the anomalies around the world because of ancient aliens? And according to the carbon, testing, they were around at least as recently as 800 years ago. This is all quite mind-blowing. And ask your questions, fellas. Ask your questions, because again, I'm struggling to process all of this. I just started looking into these seriously a week ago. And it is a lot to try and process. So yeah, ask your questions. These things do look ridiculous. Here is, am I sharing my screen? I'm not. Let me share my screen. So here's a segment of the X-ray of that tiny little insectoid mummy. You can see the metal implants in there. You can see there's bones as well. So there's larger ones that are about 2.5 feet tall that have this shape as well. As Weird Old World said, there's more big things coming this year. That looks so ridiculous. I fully recognize that looks ridiculous. I fully recognize that looks stupid. It looks absolutely stupid. At the same time, why are you gonna fake this? And think about this: the humanoid mummies, all of their internal organs are intact. All of their soft tissue is intact. So if these are fake, someone made the most impressive fakes, well beyond what should be possible. It shouldn't be possible to fake something like that. We shouldn't have the technology to do that. So if someone did, they managed to make these impeccable fakes for the humanoids. And then they also make these ridiculous insectoid creatures and stuff like this. If you're capable of making the humanoids, why make these ridiculous things that would discredit this? And if the humanoids are real and these are fake, why mix in again these ridiculous fakes with real alien mummies? It doesn't make sense. So as ridiculous as it is, I'm going to trust the experts who are saying that yes, even these ones are real too. Let's take a closer look at this image. That's a pretty interesting image here. You can see the bones. It's got weird little wings or something. Very, very strange. Little metal implants. Very, very strange. Very strange. I don't know, man. Butterfly effect. I can only encourage you guys to look into this on yourself, on your own. Even if you're buying what I'm saying, I still encourage you to look into this on your own, because this is the biggest revelation of all time, of literally ever. Aliens are real. Aliens have been on Earth for thousands of years. They may or may not still be here, but they were here. They were real. I've talked about how I truly believe the gods were real. I truly believed the gods were based on something real. And I wasn't sure what the gods were. Aliens or, some type of ascended human or these extraterrestrial entities that are 4-dimensional. I didn't know what they were, but I did truly believe they were based on something real. There's far too many congruencies and oddly specific congruencies. When you go back to the earliest versions of any religion, they overlap overwhelmingly so. The gods were based on something real. Were these the gods? Were these our ancient gods? Seems a reasonable speculation, right? I didn't even know about the fourth egg, but yeah, I mean, every part of this would be impossible to fake. And the carbon dating, right? So if these are fake, either they were faked 1,000 to 2,000 years ago, right? And done so to the point that all of our experts can't detect any fakery today, or they were faked today, again, to a point where no experts can detect it, and using materials that are 1,000 to 2,000 years old. The DNA testing consistently across different parts of the body, the carbon dating testing consistently across different parts of the body, everything about it, every single detail here screams that these are authentic. As ridiculous as they seem, everything is screaming authentic. Let me open the phone lines. I kind of forgot to do that. But if anyone does want to call in, you are, of course, welcome to call in. There really is so much more to this story. I mean, there's lots of funny anecdotes about the Ministry of Culture raiding and attempting to raid these people. I told the funny story about them raiding a foreign museum. They went to a foreign country to recover these things because they were cultural heritage while also denying them. Mario, the grave robber, is not in jail. He should be in jail. And I'm not saying he should be in jail like I think that, but like according to the laws, he should be in jail for grave robbing. But he is not because the Ministry of Culture denies the artifacts are real. So he's out on a loophole because the Ministry of Culture is saying these are fake, or at least they were until a few months ago. And therefore he didn't raid an archaeological site and therefore, committed no crime. I wonder if that'll change because now they have recognized them as real after 8 long years. What other, there was some other interesting detail about the story, but it just escaped my mind. Okay, well, there you go. So he's not in jail. Real name Leandro. That's the first time I've heard that. So you've got some like firsthand experience here. Would you like to potentially call in and share what you've heard from these people? I would be interested in hearing that. Mario has not disclosed the location that these things have been found in, and Mario is still, Weird Old World can correct me if I say anything that's incorrect here, but Mario is still producing bodies. Like I said, there's reports that an entirely new species is going to be dropped this year. I'm talking about them like they're sneakers or something. Yo, they're going to drop a totally new species this year. Okay, that's kind of crazy that you talk to the guy who finds the mummies and don't talk about the mummies. But all right. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to stop myself. If I was in front of Mario, I would definitely be asking questions. Yeah. I don't know where to go with this. My brain is struggling to process the information. So I think I've presented enough to intrigue you guys. If you're not intrigued by this, I'm probably not going to get you intrigued by presenting more. So again, do your own research, look into these things. I am sold. I truly believe these are legitimate. And look, I'm open to changing my mind. I'm open to being, proven wrong here. That's fine. But every single piece of evidence currently, all of it suggests these are real. Overwhelmingly so suggests these are real to me. So yeah, I have to reevaluate everything I thought I knew. And I don't know how to get this news out. Like Joe Rogan mentioned these recently, which is fantastic. It wasn't like a really serious mention of them, but he mentioned them. That's good. I think that's going to draw a lot more people to this, but this needs to break through like the critical barrier. We need to get this to people who have a lot more audience size than me. And I don't know how to do that. Like this is a toxic subject. It's a very toxic subject. As I talked about, the scientists very actively avoid addressing or talking at all about like the insectoids and the reptilians, even though those are real too, because they can't even get people to accept that the humanoid bodies could potentially be real. Not even that they are real, just the possibility that they could be real. They cannot get the scientific community to accept that possibility. So, trying to go all the way to, hey, we have multiple species and ridiculous bodies that are totally alien. And yeah, it's a bit much. Yeah, NAGPRA. And that's something I'll talk about. I don't think that's a coinky dink. Do you? Do you think the fact that there's this massive push to erase all American history and archaeology and to cover up all of the remains and make the remains totally illegal to know about and see? Do you think that's a coincidence when we are finding literal aliens here in America? This happened 8 years ago. These mummies were found 8 years ago. When did this NAGPRA push start? A couple years later. There was actually, immediately after, there actually was an update and a push to further restrict NAGPRA back in 2017, but that didn't do nearly as much. And then this 2024 update made it all illegal. It's all gone. I don't think that's a coincidence. And, how many times have these mummies been discovered? Do you guys believe that this is the first time anyone's discovered these alien beings? Going back to NAGPRA, I talked about this before, but in 1990, when all of these archaeologists and anthropologists were getting together for a massive, massive conference on NAGPRA, thousands of archaeologists and anthropologists all got together. I think it was in DC for this conference. They also created a petition that would ban archaeologists and anthropologists from working with the CIA and other three-letter agencies. This petition was created because back in the 1990s, there were so many archaeologists and anthropologists working with these three-letter agencies and going to foreign countries and doing, bullshit for these agencies, that countries, many of them, were just refusing any archaeologists and anthropologists at the border. They wouldn't let them into the country. They come with their passport and customs. They go, nope, you're not allowed. We don't trust you, feds. We know you guys are feds, so you're not allowed in our country. And so these people weren't able to do their job because of the proliferance and the fact that, archaeologists and anthropologists had become synonymous with federal agents. So they signed a petition to ban them from working. The petition, I don't remember the exact vote results, but it was like a 60-40 vote result with a significant portion of people choosing not to vote. There's a lot of Fed involvement in archaeology, a surprising amount of Fed involvement in archaeology. And that was in 1990. Plenty of those people are still working in archaeology, and I'm quite confident that plenty of the new people who have joined since have also been approached and, absorbed by the feds. So is that because there truly is a massive conspiracy to control and cover up archaeology involving quite a bit of archaeologists? That wasn't my position before. I've always tried to take a more conservative approach. I've always taken the approach of, if you put 10 monkeys in a room and you put a rope in the middle of the room with bananas at the top of it, a monkey's going to try and climb that rope to get the bananas. And if a fire hose comes out of the wall and blasts that monkey off the rope violently, another monkey might try and climb and it gets blasted off. Very quickly, those monkeys learn not to climb that rope. And if you take one of those monkeys out of the room and replace it with a new monkey who has no knowledge of the fire hose, it will try and climb the rope. But the other monkeys will pull it back down. You can one by one replace all 10 monkeys in that room and end up with 10 monkeys that all have no idea of the rope or of the water hose. And yet none of them will climb the rope. Keep replacing the monkeys. They'll keep pulling it down. Monkeys who have never even seen the fire hose won't let these new monkeys climb the rope. So this is how conspiracies largely work. You set a narrative, and once that narrative is set, people will self-police. You don't have to control them. You go, hey, this is the narrative, and there's consequences for stepping outside of that, and that's all you need. And then it runs itself from there. But now I'm questioning, well, maybe that's not the case. Maybe there actually is very direct involvement and cover-up going on a large scale here. I don't know. But all right, fellas, that's the episode. I'm probably going to talk about these more because there's so much more to talk about here. And this is the biggest piece of news of all time. It's so big, I truly don't know how to handle it. I truly don't know how to react to this. I don't know what I should be doing with this other than trying to spread it. It obviously needs to be spread. People need to know about this, but like the aliens got the fucking aliens, you know? I'm going to have to grow my hair out even more to become the ancient aliens, man. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Help me share this news. You don't even have to share this video. Just share the news. Share the news. I'm at a loss. I'm at a loss. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. We have ancient aliens. I'll catch you fellas next week. Thanks for tuning in and peace out.